and welcome to New Game Plus for another week. My name is Joyce and I'm joined by Meg. How are you?
I'm excellent. This is going to be a jam-packed episode today.
Yes, we are looking back on a lot of things, looking forward on a lot of things, but we've got also a very Switch-heavy episode. Are you still playing with yours?
Again, I actually am. I'm obsessed with Fallout Shelter at the moment. I never played it on mobile when it first came out, so I'm really enjoying getting back into it in the best way it's meant to be played. I love it on the Switch.
On the Switch.
Oh, I can't believe you just did that. I can't believe I just did that.
No, that's part of New Game Plus. Like that's part of the indoctrination. The audition process. But also just the fact, like, I remember playing Fallout Shelter when it was released that day, like when it was announced at E3 2016. I think.
It still feels pretty polished.
Yeah,
pretty
but
well.
I don't know. I was burned with that game so hard. Like I got deep into it, like real deep into it, like considering putting money into it deep. But then I think there was like a mutant or something just ran rampant in my base, killed everything, destroyed maybe a week, 2 weeks worth of steady progress.
Yeah.
Delete, never touched it again.
It's literally once you lose that advantage and everything starts to suck and people start to die from radiation poisoning, where you're like, do I really want to keep playing this? And then you sort of constantly playing catch up.
Yeah, and after especially 2 weeks just down the drain, like now I start to see what Dark Souls and Bloodborne players feel like.
There's so many games coming out on Switch at the moment. It's like literally once, at least a couple of times a month. It's mental.
And now Nintendo wants to have up to 20 to 30 indie games on their e-store every month, every week rather, which seems good, but at the same time, that's a lot of games to try and trawl through to find the good stuff.
They got hectic sales targets, and I think their supporting lineup is strong this year.
And we will be reviewing them all down the line, plus this week as we review Wolfenstein II for the Nintendo Switch.
What about Yoku's Island Express?
Yes, we also reviewed that for the Switch. We also talk about the upcoming EVO and Dota International.
And our 2-year check-in on Pokémon Go.
We've got a lot this week, so let's just get straight into it.
Okay, so look, let's clear this up straight away. We reviewed Wolfenstein II last year, and it was a fantastic game last year. Don't get me wrong, it stood as, I think, came second in the New Game Plus Game of the Year rankings. It was a fantastic game, great shooter, showed that id are just pumping out the best Bethesda games at the moment. And I really felt that since it came out on the Switch, I really needed to reiterate why exactly that is and what about the game made it worth not only playing the first time, but I still think worth playing it on Switch. So let's get the technical stuff out of the way. Doom came out on the Switch, and it was cool to see Doom on the Switch. Here's this high-end, visually exciting, fast-paced, like they were using it to sell NVIDIA cards, right? This was one of those really high-tier games that they wanted to show off, showcase PC hardware and showcase consoles and showcase the viability of the id Tech engine. So Panic Room came along and they ported it over. And the game was fine on the Switch. I say fine. It tended to chug a little bit. The graphics weren't great. The the kills, which are an important part of running around, looked not great. Let's be real. And it was great that the game still existed on Switch because then these people could play it. The people who hadn't played it on console hadn't played it on thing. Wolfenstein gets announced, and so it's the same technology. It's id Tech, and we already know that the game itself is fantastic. Like we've seen it, we've played it on PC, we've potentially played it on Xbox or PS4. So it's coming to Switch. So people start to worry, how is the actual port going to be? This port is so fantastic. It is, it's lower res. The main thing that you're going to notice is when people speak, the lip motion's a little bit jank. That's probably the biggest issue I found with the game. As far as it running, as far as it playing well, all those kind of things, it plays fantastically. You put it in the dock, it plays even better. Like this, it really is a testament to the foundations of id and where they started with as far as actually building engines that can scale from high end to low end. And playing it again for the second time, I switched to Fergus's story. The first time I played through as Wiley's story. So Wiley, can't remember his name, doesn't matter. But I played through his story, and that was great. The way they carried his character then was fine. And I'm enjoying playing it with Fergus to see what the changes are. But all the moments that hit me in the first time I played through are still relevant and still hit so well. I'm thinking this is what makes good old history and good sci-fi over bad sci-fi. You can take the sci-fi elements out of the story and it still lands. It still lands its punches. Like the sci-fi MacGuffin doesn't shape one thing. And this is a problem with a lot of science fiction, especially, how do I say it delicately? Americans love their sci-fi explained to them, and in just disgusting levels of minutia. Like, oh, the only reason that this drive works is because they have this specific type of... None of that matters. It's there to frame the story and to tell these stories that you can relate to. And that's what this game does better than anything that I've played in the last little while. Here we are in this world where the war ends and it doesn't end. The Nazis win. And so they're taking over all these different places, and you're playing through trying to liberate Europe, and you're trying to liberate these places, and you're playing as BJ Blazkowicz, who's dealing with being like a half Jewish American, he's trying to save as many people as he can and dealing with all of these problems. And it did a fantastic job of balancing these, what you would consider pretty mundane characters, and telling their story and making you feel for these people. And it was a revelation. And then number 2 came out, and it nailed it even harder because it went to America. New York's been bombed, you're playing in America, you're dealing with the Klan siding up with the Nazis, and as much as it's like, well, that's an obvious connection, of course it is, but the way that they show how easy the slide was and how easily these people were convinced that this is the way to go, it just nails what it's trying to do. And yeah, people could say the cutscenes aren't technically part of a game, and that's fine. That's a reasonable argument to make, even if I think that it's a little bit pedantic. Wolfenstein is worth a play again. If you find it cheap on the Switch, or you find a copy on the Switch and you find yourself in like a version of it that you can play, it's definitely worth playing again. And I still contend it is one of the best games we've made in the last 5 years. Despite the stealth gameplay being a little bit jank, despite a couple of the other things being a little bit annoying, it's still one of the best games we've produced in the last 5 years, hands down, and I recommend it to absolutely everyone.
There are certain things that should not work together but actually really do, like ice cream and pizza, or Oreos and nacho cheese. In this case, we are talking about Metroidvania and pinball. Jamie, would you ever expect those two genres to work together?
No, not in the absolute slightest. But then you, of all people, turned me on to this wonderful game called Yoku's Island Express, and all of a sudden, like, hey, this is a really weird concept that actually works.
Yeah,
and you don't get to say it about most concepts like this.
No, you don't. Like, it's definitely swinging for the stars with its concept, and we should explain what this game is really. So you are traveling around on an island as Yoku, this dung beetle that's rolling around this stone that's maybe stone ball that's thrice your size.
Yeah, Russ.
Yeah, so you're exploring the environment, you're delivering mail because, you're a dung beetle, and that's what dung beetles do.
As they do.
And dotted around the environment, apart from usual platforms and grass and ramps and things like that, are pinball flippers, which you then use to launch yourself around the environment.
Into basically these little mini pinball areas as you use to kind of progress throughout this island, explore and solve a great mystery, which, look, if you're going to be playing this like most most games of this type, the story isn't really why you're here. You're here for kind of the nature of exploration, and I feel like for the most part, Yoku nails it. I think it's a really interesting idea, and they actually execute on it really well.
And there is a bunch of varieties to go through as well. Like, it does sound like a one-trick pony on the surface, but really, like, they managed to take this template and like apply so many possible pinball tricks, apply so many platforming areas with its limited palette.
Yeah, no, like, it actually, there's enough variety that even though this isn't the longest game on the planet, because it's one of those types of games, it actually still feels really fresh throughout the entire thing. I mean, my only issue with the whole thing is that, as someone who maybe deals a little bit too much in actual pinball and even video pinball, the physics don't always want to be the nicest thing in the world. Like, when you're doing simple stuff, it's fine. Like, moving around that world is fine. There's no problem with that. But when you're trying to do more advanced shots, and when you're trying to be a little bit more specific, it can maybe be a little bit too frustrating, a little bit too just like, I just want to get this one shot in. Why are you just being so uncooperative?
It sounds like you want the pinball to be a lot more binary than it is.
A little bit, yeah. Like, I actually wouldn't mind, maybe I'm used to kind of actual pinball, but...
See, I come at it the other way. Like, the pinball, I reckon, is not binary enough for my liking. Like you have to know that you have to hit the flipper at a very specific point in order to reach this certain part of the map or this certain platform. But at the same time, it kind of comes into the game's design. Like, it doesn't just merely mash Metroidvania and pinball together and hope for the best. It considers how these two genres can complement each other. So the what's called pinball isn't quite video pinball accurate, but it allows the sort of enough precision to allow you to get to where you need to. And there's enough pinball in the environment to see that influence come to it as well.
Again, when you're moving around the world, it's fine. But when you're doing specific stuff, I feel like when you're fighting bosses, for instance, it can get a little much.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's a really pretty looking game. The soundtrack is charming.
Yeah, and that's basically the thing as well. Like, this game exudes charm. It's just the fact that the whole concept of you're just this tiny little dung beetle. You have a button that's dedicated just to blowing a party blower.
And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, like, it's obnoxious after a while, especially if you're spamming the A button for like a full minute.
But dude, it's a party blower, come on.
Yeah, but like, it just it didn't need to be that, but it's there. And so same thing with the sort of enemies, which are upfront menacing, but in the end, they just have this sort of roguish charm to them. Hell, even the spiders, I don't like spiders in video games at all.
No, you don't.
But even these ones have like, that sort of cartoony enough for me to only be slightly shit scared at.
Well, that's an impressive feat in its own right.
Yeah. So like, so having said that though, the charm basically lasts as good as the game's 4 to 6 hours. If you want to 100% it, good luck, because backtracking around and trying to reach those obscure areas of the map is a chore to be sure, especially since on the world map screen, none of the areas are labeled by name. So if you need to go to a particular area to try to plant a mushroom seed or whatever, that's not how mushrooms work, by the way. If you want to do that though, it's just a lot of trial and error or facts, really.
Yeah, pretty much.
But ultimately, like, despite these small quibbles, Yoku's Island Express takes these two very disparate concepts and actually mashes them together into something that's charming and enjoyable, right, Jamie?
Absolutely. I would absolutely agree with that. Like, I think it's almost there for me, but I enjoy my time. I enjoy my time with it. I think that's more I can say for most of the game. Like, again, I had a lot of fun with it, so even with those small quibbles, I'd still recommend it.
So normally when we do one of these segments, it's me terrorizing Shane with things that he doesn't like, which always makes for decent television because watching him get flustered and angry. But today we're talking about two things that he does like. Isn't that right, Shaney?
You could be debatable on like some
well,
of
like
the Evo stuff, but like TI, very much.
TI. So we are going to discuss Evo Championships held in Las Vegas on the 3rd to the 6th of August. And that is, of course, the biggest fighting game tournament in the world, hands down. I don't think there's any...
It's basically the major. It should be the CPT final, but it's not. But hey.
It's a year... I get it. That's middle of the year. It's tough. So, and then, of course, the other one, which they obviously don't care about it, is the International, which is, of course, the big Dota 2 tournament of the year. Prize pool currently sitting at about 21 million as we film this. So, again, it's going to be another big year for that. So, what we figured we'd do is we'd give you a bit of a guide on what you should look out for, who you should be interested in, if you wanted to start getting into these kind of events and actually start getting into watching esports, because it's both subjects that we're pretty well versed on. So let's do Evo first. Now, Evo, of course, has all of the big games, and by big games, we are usually referring to the 3 main FGC games and then the 2 smashes. Fair to say?
Fair to say.
So Street Fighter V.
Yep.
Tekken 7.
Yep.
Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Fighter Z.
Fighters.
Is it Fighters?
It's literally just fighters, but it is DBFC.
Okay. And then the smashes, which are, of course, Melee, the 18-year-old. You can take it out to drink now in Australia. And then, of course, Smash 4, which will be the last year for Smash 4 as an interesting aside with the new one coming out. So, Street Fighter V, obviously, the FGC is still built on Street Fighter. It doesn't matter what your feelings of the game are, and a lot of people don't like it, Shane included.
Yeah, it's one of those games that still is the baseline. Like you've got to have it. You can't not have it, and it's always still fairly entertaining.
And when Capcom had no money, which was just after they made Street Fighter V, they still put their money where their mouth was, and they backed the game and a lot of that success. And luckily now Monster Hunters came and got them out of that dirt, so they've got more money to throw at it, and they have been. And so we are going into Evo with Takedo sitting 2nd in the Capcom Pro Tour rankings.
I believe he's actually like 3rd because I think
Infiltration is 2nd. You're right.
I think it's Fujiwara is 1st, which
is interesting.
Interesting, like he's a very
delivers his tofu, comes and plays fighting games.
I'm not going to initial D, yes, where I understand it. But no.
Takedo won last year. He was the BAM champion as well. So we've seen a lot of his great play over the last few years.
Yep.
And then the list is made up of a lot of people you'd expect. Lauren's on there, Daigo's in the top 10. Xian is 5th, I think.
Xian is 5th, and he's had a few really good results of the recent, now. So.
And he's gotten a lot better. I remember when he first started playing SF5 and he was playing Fang. And that was because he was playing Fang. Like, he was so wasted on that character. Now that he's playing, because who's he on now? Ibuki, that's right. And so now that he's on Ibuki, he really found his groove again.
Yeah.
He's back in contention, which is good to see, because Xian's always the nicest dude in the world. Like, every time I've ever met him, really nice dude. So wrapping up Evo, you'll have your anime games. DOA 6 is going to be there. Soul Calibur 6 will be there. It's going to be
pretty big.
Pretty big to watch. There'll be lots of exhibitions, lots of fun. Definitely check it out. 3rd to the 6th in Australia.
We haven't had the actual release of the schedule yet, so what that last day, that Sunday will be, is still up in the air, and what will actually be those big games. You never know, there might be one big surprise.
TI.
All right.
So the international, as per usual, they release their compendiums. They're coming into it. It's been an interesting year. We have probably 3 clear teams that are very good: LGD, VP, Liquid. I would say Liquid is still one of the top teams in the world.
Yep.
And they're pretty much a good chance to win it again. They would be the first team to go back to back, both players and team.
I still think that VP is going to be very much a big team. They've always kind of choked in TIs, which is interesting, and it could be.
It's going to be them throwing. If they lose, it's going to be them throwing.
Maybe. It may be just be a really, really good match between Liquid and VP, or LGD
and that's all you want. No one wants TI4. No one wants newbie running down middle and winning the game in just a wipe. Because who wants that for a final, right? Hopefully that gives you enough to understand those things. Don't forget to check out our coverage of it. We'll be covering it a lot and discussing it. If you do have any more questions, jump into our Discord. We are always happy to talk esports in our esports lounge. We'll see you guys next time.
It's hard to believe that it was 2 whole years ago when Pokemon Go was taking the world by storm. You couldn't walk anywhere without bumping into a group of people trying to catch Pikachu. You'd think that after that strong start that the game would have just died, but no, Niantic, the game's developers, has kept on improving this game over the past 2 years to keep the community still thriving and strong as it's ever been. I've got Meg here to talk about the game over the past 2 years, and you've recently come back to it, haven't you?
I have. I was an early adopter back when it was all the rage, and you couldn't help when it was new to drive home at night and have people in front of you driving at 40 kilometers an hour trying to catch Pokemon behind the wheel. And I think that's probably the only thing that has changed now. I think that's kind of dropped off a little bit, but needless to say, the community feel is extremely strong. The Facebook pages are active every single day, and it's really incredible to see. I can't believe it.
And Niantic have helped foster this community. I think one of the biggest things to do this is community days. Every month they'll have an extra spawn rate of a popular Pokemon or Mareep. And as a result, you'll have people just walking through parks and streets, usually in improvised groups as well, just all for the same objective of trying to catch a shiny Pokemon.
Now they've implemented friends and adding friends and people that you know.
Finally, at long last, they've
great.
Introduced this feature.
Yeah, you can trade gifts and send them items and things like that, but not only that, Pokemon as well. And the further away those Pokemon are from where the last person that's caught it, the more points you get for that trade, which is really cool.
No, I recently came back from a trip in Canada, so I've had fun trading tourists all around.
Right? Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I think it's the best. And not only that, they've implemented this new Professor Willow, who's a silver fox guy that kind of looks like Professor Oak. He's brought in these objectives, which are field missions and things like that add a longevity to playing the game for a longer time.
Yeah, previously Pokemon Go was always kind of a nothing game. Even the most ardent fans will admit this. It's background noise, but even something as small as the daily quests give you sort of more guidance in how you play, even when you're just walking to the shops and back. And it makes a small but very important difference. Not to mention getting that good Mew at the end of the special quests.
Yeah, so there's field research and special research. One of them is mostly daily quests, and the other one sort of progresses in the story and helps your character sort of get more coins to get better upgrades and equipment and things like that, so you can catch the better Pokemon. But
speaking of coins though, the raid system was probably the biggest change that came around last year, and that certainly revitalized the game.
It's awesome.
Yeah, they replaced the stack the same 6 fat Pokemon into a gym with the motivation system, which allowed much more diversity in both what's called the Pokemon that took up a gym and their trainers.
That's right. So now when you play in a raid, essentially when you go to a gym to do a battle, there are multiple Pokemon that all have motivation meters above their head, and they have to sustain a certain amount of losses to defeat them and deplete that motivation meter.
And even then it erodes over the course of time, and the game incentivizes you to cash out your Pokemon so you can get your coins, so you can buy your egg incubators and things like that.
Yeah.
Have you spent any money in Pokemon Go yet?
I personally haven't. I'm really against in-game microtransactions for apps on my phone. I'd rather spend them on like other bigger things.
Yeah.
But my friend has spent hundreds of dollars in this game, and I believe he's single-handedly responsible for keeping Niantic alive. But
one of the whalers. I mean, one of the whales in the game I see. But like, I've personally spent like occasional $10 draft in this game, but it never felt like a chore. I didn't feel like I had
it was
to
exciting,
give
especially
money.
when you spend it on like incense and stuff to make things spawn more frequently. I
Egg
really love
incubators,
that.
man. We've got to hatch those eggs. Got to see if we can get those baby Pokemon.
Speaking of that, the incubators, one thing I'm having trouble handling is the fact that still in this day and age, the GPS, like being constantly on your phone, drains the battery so hardcore even now. And I would love to keep this app open more regularly to enjoy having like walking around and catching those Pokemon more.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem that's going to be solved anytime soon. You're going to have to be content with carrying around a battery charger.
Legit.
And like, you can tell like the more hardcore players are carrying multiple phones, multiple chargers. They might as well be wearing like this a Yu-Gi-Oh-esque arm contraption with just 4 phones, 4 battery chargers, like one really muscular arm and one not so much.
One thing I really want to see is more like embracing of the regional areas, so more Pokemon stops out in remote locations instead of just being metro.
No, yeah, like if you're in the CBD, it's great to play Pokemon Go. If you're even 40 minutes out, like you get suburbs with just like 1 gym and 3 Pokestops. Lord help you if you want to try to catch a Mewtwo. The amount of hoops that you have to go through to be able to unlock that EX quest are just too much for rural players, and that's something that Pokemon Go, that app, needs to improve, as well as GPS. The fact that you're still like just wandering around to the point where to the point where like you're stepping in and out of the gym you're trying to raid. But these are kind of small quibbles in a game that has managed to foster its community and its app over the course of 2 years with incremental but very important improvements, to the point that we are still talking about this, what we thought was a fad. We're still talking about it 2 years since its release.
Enjoy the 3 generations of Pokemon that they've included now, which are one of the first generations is compatible with Pokemon Go Let's Go Eevee coming out in November this year, but it's a perfect time to jump on board to play this game if you haven't for a really long time, because there's a lot of refreshing changes that people are really embracing.
Wasn't that segment featuring the last 2 people really cool? They seemed really knowledgeable and awesome and really cool, right?
I mean, it definitely wasn't us.
No,
Doesn't sound like us at all.
Not at all. But I think, well, normally we talk about Pokemon Go, but you just heard us talk about that. So, I don't know, if you got thoughts on the upcoming wall of esports, that is EVO and Dota International.
Yeah, so Jason Shane had a really great chat about the latest esports updates with EVO and Dota, but the fact that EVO is now announced to be in Japan next year in February, but in the furthest south place past Hiroshima ever, that's a big deal. It's kind of like us saying, let's do an esports tournament in Cairns.
Like, there wouldn't be too many people averse to the idea of going to Cairns, although we do have the Melbourne Esports Open coming up in, September?
Yeah.
Featuring the likes of League of Legends, Overwatch, and fighting games.
I'm super excited about that.
Brought to you by Couch Warriors, mind you.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the Melbourne's biggest esports events besides BAM, which is really great, but it's going to be the first time it's held at such a premium location with 2 massive games that are so popular right now. I can't wait to check it out.
No, yeah, but like that's far in the future though. Like EVO, like all the big fighting game action. Like what are you hoping to see out of EVO?
I want to see some really hot contenders that are different from this year's winners. I want to see some up and coming legends that from the grassroots up that really blow people away.
And that's the exact same thing I want to see from the Dota International as well. Like, I want to see some unpredictable big players. I want to see like the fringe stuff like come into the spotlight.
Not even that, but what about that prize pool? It just gets bigger every year. People donating thousands and thousands of dollars. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, and there are many on New Game Plus that have probably contributed quite a fair bit to that prize pool. Whether they break the record this year, they probably will break the record this year. But like, it's surprising that they manage to do so every year. There's something
Do you watch
about
any
that
streams live of any esports tournaments? Like as they're unfolding?
I like to watch the big ones like EVO, Dota International, and the Overwatch League, which has been going gangbusters.
Amazing, yeah. It like gets record viewers every time.
I kind of want to watch esports now, so I'm going to get going. So we might as well do this thing. Thank you very much for watching. If you like New Game Plus, go to our website, www.newgameplus.tv.
Instagram, Twitch, YouTube,
Facebook,
Twitter, the whole shebang.
Yeah, everything we are, New Game Plus TV, one word, no spaces. Thank you very much, Megan.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And we'll see you next week.